In this video, I'll show you how to make a Kururin skill toy using a special gauge and jig that I designed. A link to both are in the description. All you need to play is a solid surface. Mount a blank in a wood lathe and use a roughing gouge to make it round. Next, use a parting tool to cut a groove on one end of the blank. Measure the length of the Kururin with the long side of the Kururin gauge. Use the parting tool to create a groove on the other side. A skew chisel or scraper is used to get the diameter of the middle correct. Check the diameter with the Kururin gauge. Find the exact middle using the short edge of the gauge and mark it. I like to get the end diameter to the right size, then work on the profile for one side. Remember, you can only remove material, you can't put it back on, so be very careful when you're making the cuts. Possibly using a scraper is an easier way to do it. Once it looks reasonable, start working on the other side. If you're careful, it should be possible to make it symmetric on both sides. Check the profile using the gauge. The skew chisel can be used to cut grooves on the end. This step is optional, but it looks nice. I did this by eye, but it's probably better to mark the locations on the Kururin first. Move the tool rest out of the way and turn the speed of the lathe down. Start with coarse sandpaper before moving on to finer grades. You will need to remove the pencil line that marks the middle. After each grade, be sure to stop the lathe and sand with the grain by hand. Turn the speed of the lathe up and apply a few coats of friction polish. Finally, finish it with beeswax. Remove the Kururin from the lathe. Use a bandsaw to cut most of the extra material, but don't go right down to the edge. If you don't have a bandsaw, this step could easily be done with a handsaw. With a set square, make sure the miter gauge is perpendicular to the disc sander. Hold the Kururin sanding jig firmly against the fence. Check the Kururin stands upright by rotating it on a level surface. I use a laser cutter to engrave mine. Pads at the end greatly improve play, so it's worth making them. Compass cutters are the easiest way to cut silicone, but it's still quite fiddly. Press down hard on the mat to make sure the compass cutter doesn't slip. You'll probably need to go around a few times. Check the size of the pad is what you intended it to be. Often the silicone congeals at the end of the tube and you need to remove it with a paperclip. The silicone sealant was from Poundland. It's best to apply a very thin layer. Do the same for the other side. Thanks very much for watching. If you want either the Kururin gauge or the Kururin sanding jig, they're both available from a link in the description.